Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to No Timeouts, a football show coming at you from the Score Studio. My name is Jonah Birnbaum. That is Dan Wilkins. That is Tyler MacKillop. That is Justin Boone. You know them. You love them. And quickly, before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the brand new No Timeouts YouTube channel. Fellas, last week we came out sounding the alarm bell about the flailing New York Jets. I thought it was only right that we kick off this week's show by doing the same for a perennial disappointment in the NFC, the Dallas Cowboys. Yikes, man. Last Sunday, they got spanked to the tune of 47-9 by the Detroit Lions, suffering the worst home loss of the Jerry Jones era, and on his 82nd birthday, no less. You simply hate to see it. That loss, it dropped them to 3-3, and it highlighted, a number of things that are going wrong with this team. But the biggest takeaway has to be that their defense can't stop a cold right now. 6 weeks into the season, they're giving up 28 points per game, and I gotta say, not feeling great about my bold prediction that they would come out of the NFC and lose to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Wilkie, are the Cowboys cooked?
So I don't want to upset Cowboys fans here, but I will go out on a limb and say that they probably hate their team more than anyone else right now. Like you said, the defense is awful. Basically, if they're not playing Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, or Justin Fields, they're getting embarrassed. Maybe that gets better as the season goes on, but to me, that's not even the only problem right now. You're looking at an offense that has Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and is somehow just as bad as the defense is. They are 25th in EPA per play. That's sandwiched right between the Giants and the Broncos. The problem here for me is, aside from those two superstars, they don't have any playmakers. None. This was a problem looking ahead in the offseason, and they did nothing to fix it. Jerry Jones made the excuse that they couldn't afford Derrick Henry and his 2-year, $16 million deal. And then when you get to the regular season and those Davante Adams trade rumors start picking up, Stephen Jones comes out and says, hey, we're not going to be doing that either. You know, I don't want any team to follow the Saints blueprint and completely destroy your salary cap for 5 years, but this isn't even a situation like that where they had no cap flexibility. They have a little wiggle room. And even if they were right up against it, a little cash and a little flexibility goes a long way. You would think that of all teams, America's team would be exercising all options here. Literally the most valuable franchise in all of sports.
Yep.
Instead, they just do nothing and cry poor. So it's pretty embarrassing, and yeah, this team's cooked.
You know the Cowboys are a big deal when it's their bye week, and we're talking about them to lead the show, right? Like, that's so funny to me. But injuries certainly haven't helped, but I don't really see what's going to turn around here for them, right? Like, maybe the offense with the bye week can kind of solidify some things, but I think you said it. All that talk in the offseason, and we spoke about it during the offseason, right? All the talk about we're going to go out and do everything we can, and they just didn't, and now we're kind of seeing that come to play.
The Cowboys' best years with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons have already passed. Yep. Those are the last 2 years. This roster is significantly worse than they've been the last 2 years.
And you look at, I'm talking about how they don't go out and spend money the way that you would expect the Cowboys to. This also applies to the coaching staff, right? We were all thinking at the end of last year that they're probably going to move on from Mike McCarthy because it hasn't been going the way they expected. They hadn't gotten over the top. But Jerry Jones never does that, and a big reason is because he doesn't want to pay coaches to not coach for him. This is a problem.
Yeah. I just can't get over how bad their rushing game has been, too. Like, you talk about, the disappointing performances so far from Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb to a certain degree, but it's like their running game creates no opportunity for the passing game to flourish. They are last in the NFL in rushing yards per game. They're last in the NFL in yards per carry. Their longest rush of the season is 13 yards. Yeah. I feel like if you put Tyler in the backfield, he could probably get a 20-yard run in a 6-week span. So, yeah, there's so many things wrong with this team right now, and I don't know that things are going to get better even once they're healthy.
They just couldn't afford Derrick Henry. It's
hey,
tough.
Man,
yeah.
When you're the most valuable franchise in all of North American sports, times are tough. Yeah. Times are tough. Speaking of times are tough, so on the flip side of that Cowboys-Lions game, normally, after such a resounding victory, reason to celebrate. That wasn't the case for the Lions. They suffered a gutting, devastating loss in that victory over Dallas, losing Aiden Hutchinson for the remainder of the season. He is the linchpin of their defense. He was probably going to win the Defensive Player of the Year award. And as much as, they're 4-1 and they look like the cream of the NFC along with the Vikings, this is a big blow. T, where are you at with the Lions, and what does this mean for a team that had Super Bowl ambitions?
Yeah, I think that if they don't make a trade and acquire a legitimate pass rusher, that they have no chance of winning a Super Bowl this year. Because you look at Hutchison, you said he was probably going to be, he was the Defensive Player of the Year. He was going to win Defensive Player of the Year. He had a 38% pass rush win rate. Myles Garrett was next best at 27%, 11% better. Led the league in pressures with 45, led the league in sacks with 8. Now they lost Marcus Davenport a couple weeks ago. They acquired in the offseason to run on the opposite side. Now they're down to Josh Paschal and James Houston. James Houston's barely played last year, had a decent rookie year, but has been more of a rotational piece. This team has to have an elite pass rush to compete for a Super Bowl. I don't care how good the offense is. You look at the last 4 Super Bowl winners, they were all 7th or better in sack rate. That's the last 2 years with the Chiefs, the Bucks, and the Rams. Now, I'll ask you guys this before I get into some potential options, the obvious being Hassan Reddick. Do you see any of Josh Hines-Allen, Max Crosby, or Myles Garrett being legitimate options that they would acquire?
No.
I would say that those teams are not looking to get rid of those guys, so it would take a lot to get them, and I'm not sure Detroit's willing to do it. Here are 3 potential options in my mind for them to replace Hutchinson's production, and maybe they can get 2 of the 3. Zadarius Smith with the Browns. He's got 1 more year after this year, but his contract's pretty cheap. Josh Uche with the Patriots. He's on the last year of his deal with the Pats. I could see this team. He's 26. He's still relatively young. Maybe he's a future piece for them, but I think they're more than willing to let him go. And then Calais Campbell, a veteran guy, still been pretty productive this year for Miami. The Dolphins, their season's over. I think they'd be willing to let him go, and it would be pretty cheap. I would think if they legitimately want to compete for a Super Bowl, they probably need to acquire 2 out of those 3, but at least 1 of the 3, because there's no world where this team, as good as the defense has kind of been, their pass EPA is actually 4th in the league. The Vikings are going to be a big test this week to see if they're legit. There's a lot of problems, I think, if they can't find an elite pass rusher to replace Hutchinson.
If they can approximate the production that Hutchison would have given them, recreated in the aggregate, so to speak. I had to do it to one time. I still think they can win the NFC, right? Because if you look at this Detroit team with a slightly worse defense, isn't it essentially last year's Detroit team, which was not an elite defense? They were elite at pressuring the quarterback, but the total defensive package, they weren't one of the league's best teams. They had an elite offense, and they still came within 3 points of winning the NFC Championship.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the difference in this league is pass rush. If we can win by rushing with 4, they're improved in the secondary. Their offense can take them far. I just don't think it's amongst the league's best unless you have Patrick Mahomes throwing the football.
Yeah, Hassan Reddick is obviously the most is the best situation there for them. It might prove to be too complicated with the contract. I think he's proven that he does not want to play on the contract that he's on, and that would involve the Lions, I assume, giving him a big deal to come over. I'm not sure they're prepared to do that. I like your group that you suggested. I would add Jadeveon Clowney. I think he would make a lot of sense as well and would probably be very cheap on the trade. So.
And I don't know if you guys know this. I read that the Jets, if they trade Reddick to an NFC team, the 3rd-round pick turns into a 2nd. So it's not as interesting for them to do it. I think they still would if the package is right, but it's going to take a little bit of a pretty penny to get him.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, they, like you said, they need to do something, right? Because that is some serious production that they need to replace. Pivoting a bit here, fellas. Remember in late September when we were bemoaning the caliber of play from the rookie quarterbacks? What a difference a few weeks makes. Caleb Williams has looked outstanding for the last few weeks. Bo Nix seems to be finding his groove as well. Drake May, he threw 3 touchdown passes in his first NFL start. The kids are starting to look all right. And Boone, I'm curious as to your thoughts on this. What gives with the kids, and how are you feeling about a crop of rookie quarterbacks that maybe a few weeks ago we weren't feeling so high on?
It's interesting. I mean, Jaden Daniels obviously stole a lot of the headlines early on, and we talked about how Caleb Williams was probably going to be okay. He just needed more time to get comfortable, and that's what we're seeing. He looks a lot more confident out there. I'm not overreacting to a 4-touchdown game against the Jags defense because I think that had a lot to do with the opponent, but he looks much more confident, much more comfortable, including running the ball a little bit, and we're seeing the stats come along with it. It also helps, too, that he's gotten his receiving core healthy, which he didn't really have for a few weeks there. So Caleb's going to be fine. Drake May's interesting. We should say we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. We don't know the story he went for an MRI after practice yesterday. It seemed like he was okay, full practice. There wasn't really any injury to report, but then the report said he went for the MRI. So we'll have to pay attention to that. But in his first start, it's exactly what we kind of hoped for, at least what I hoped for, that he was going to elevate the passing game a little bit. He was way more willing to throw the ball downfield than Jacoby Brissett was. and he brought that rushing element. It made that offense like at least watchable, right? When Brissett was out there, it was brutal paying attention to those Patriots games. With May out there, he at least gives them a chance, and that's his first start, so let's see where he can go from there. But again, giving the context, a lot of those stats, especially the passing stats, that's a little garbage time there. That kind of inflated it a bit. But for fantasy, I think it's really interesting too. I always talk about the rushing element for quarterbacks. He was the QB 10 in fantasy last week, and the rushing was a big part of that. And then Bo Nix, he plays tonight, and he squares off with another rookie in Spencer Rattler. And Nix, I really didn't like him as a prospect. I haven't loved what I've seen so far, but I'll at least say from a fantasy perspective, he's putting up some numbers. And again, he's a guy that he's put up 3 top 13 fantasy quarterback finishes this season already. So a little bit of rushing from him. Maybe we'll see that receiving core start to round out. They're trying some new pieces there. His buddy Troy Franklin from college. So not overly excited about him. And Spencer Rattler too. I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to think about him. But last week, like to throw him into that situation, and I know the Saints got stomped, but to be out there, to lose your top receivers, to still be able to, put up some decent stats, like I think he's at least interesting. Hopefully we get to see him for a few more weeks and see if he can get more comfortable, though he has a really tough challenge against that Broncos defense tonight.
The poor guy, he's like he goes in plays last week and this week with just no receiving core against 2 of the most blitz-heavy defenses in the entire league
Offensive
with a
line
horrendous
banged up,
offensive line. I mean, it couldn't be any more difficult for Rattler. I like him. He's a guy in college that really dealt with terrible offensive line play and found ways to be successful. So I'm not super excited about tonight, just throwing to Bub Beans and Cedric Wilson. But I don't know. I think that Rattler could be someone that Saints give an extended look, hopefully after more than just the 2 weeks, because these 2 weeks are just brutal for any quarterback, let alone a third, fourth round pick rookie for Rattler. So
I was a big fan of his in the draft as soon as I watched that Georgia game where he was getting beat up and just delivering NFL throw after NFL throw. I think he can be a player in this league. I actually like his ceiling even more than Bo Nix. Bo Nix, to me, as a rookie, just shades of Daniel Jones. Just
I would agree.
Scrambling gets people excited. But he's not like a super dynamic athlete, and he's not a downfield passer. So I'm not really excited about him, but I'm very interested in Rattler.
Yeah, Rattler was the #1 overall recruit in his high school class. He had a little bit of, if anyone watched the QB1 doc from Netflix, he was on there, had a little bit off the field stuff, but a gamer. I mean, Caleb Williams actually replaced him in Oklahoma, and then he transferred to South Carolina and played even better without the great Lincoln Riley as his coach. I think he has a good chance too.
In any event, I am loving how this rookie quarterback discourse has broadened beyond Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. This rocks. We're talking Spencer Rattler, Week 7. This is pretty exciting stuff, and it's frankly unusual to have this many rookie quarterbacks to talk about at this point in the season. So I'm enjoying that. On that note, lads, let's bring in our virtual homie, the Score's lead NFL reporter, Josh Tolentino. JT, we got so much to talk about this week. Let's start in Pittsburgh. The Steelers are 4-2. Things are rolling pretty well in Steeltown, and yet head coach Mike Tomlin, rather surprisingly, said earlier this week that he might be making or at least considering a change at quarterback. Russell Wilson, who spent the first 6 weeks of the season sidelined with a calf injury, he's in consideration to start this Sunday against the Jets and replace Justin Fields, despite the fact that Fields is arguably playing the best quarterback of his NFL career. He's been more efficient than ever this season. He's making fewer mistakes. He actually has a higher adjusted EPA than C.J. Stroud, which is pretty hard to believe. Josh, is Pittsburgh making the right decision in potentially benching Fields and turning to a soon-to-be 36-year-old Russell Wilson?
Jonah, quite frankly, I don't agree with the move. Just like what you pointed out, Justin Fields, he's rejuvenated his career in Pittsburgh. They have a winning record, like much of the history that they do under Mike Tomlin. And we've seen Russell Wilson, he's years removed from his best playing days. He hasn't played well since arguably 2021, 2020. And just concentrating on the Justin Fields aspect, today he told reporters that, if he had played better, this wouldn't be a question. But I spoke to a source close to Justin who said his focus hasn't wavered. He's still preparing with the mindset of the starter in case Russell suffers another injury, in case things go sour. Concentrating on the why, though, for Pittsburgh's side, with Russell Wilson, obviously he brings a stacked resume. He hasn't quite performed to that level in several years, but specific area, and speaking with folks in Pittsburgh, they really want to improve on their early downs particularly on first down. They have not had a lot of success there, again, on their early downs. And another person with personnel that they really want to unlock is tight end Pat Freiermuth. They think that if he can get going, that'll help with the run game, with play action, opening up that middle parts of the field. 22 catches, 194 yards for Pat Freiermuth, who they're very high on in that building. But ultimately, guys, I'm not sure how much Russell will really improve this offense, especially given the lack of continuity, the injuries at offensive line. But the switch is in, and for now, Mike Tomlin, as we know, he's sticking with his guys, particularly his veteran guys, as the Pittsburgh Steelers switch from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson this week.
So, Josh, assuming that does happen and Wilson starts over Fields, how long of a leash do you think he's going to have? Like, if he goes out and throws up an absolute dud on Sunday, are they going immediately back to Fields come Week 8?
I wouldn't expect that based on folks that I've spoken to in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin, and this season has been really telling. Russell Wilson, he's been atop the depth chart as he's been dealing with his injuries this entire time that Justin Fields has been the starter. Russell Wilson's still been on top of that depth chart with this move. I think Mike Tomlin is really looking to spark this offense under Arthur Smith. They're not running the ball particularly well. And we've seen, again, Justin Fields performing at arguably the best level in his career, but past 2 games have not been that bright. The interceptions are down for sure, but 5 turnover-worthy plays over these past 2 games. And they're just really hoping to unlock another part of this offense with Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson now connecting for this week.
I have a bit of a conspiratorial take that I want to throw in here. I think this is a really smart move from Tomlin. And I'm not saying that because I think Wilson should be starting. But I think if you look at it, and he is a great coach in my mind, and I think you look at it as they're going up against the Jets defense. It's a very tough matchup. If you throw Fields out there and he totally blows it, then you got to go to Russ and you don't know what you have. So you put Wilson out there. If Wilson comes through, great. If Wilson stumbles in that game, then you get to go back to Fields, who apparently the locker room really likes, and it works out. I think it's kind of a really smart, chestnut checkers move from Tomlin.
Yeah, I never thought of it through that perspective, and the way you outlined it, it does seem like a win-win for Tomlin, but we'll see. Your tinfoil hat's over there, by the way. Josh, we got another head-scratcher for you to dissect, man. So the Cleveland Browns, who are committed to sticking with Deshaun Watson at quarterback and at least pretending like they're going to try to compete with Deshaun at QB1, they just got rid of perhaps the most talented playmaker in their entire offense. They dealt Amari Cooper to the Buffalo Bills for a pair of draft picks, and it's a move that only makes it harder to understand what exactly the Browns are trying to accomplish. Josh, why did the Browns trade Amari Cooper when their offense already stinks?
Yeah, back in the offseason, the Browns and general manager Andrew Berry, they restructured Amari Cooper's deal. They added some void years, some incentives, and really the biggest part was that they, under the conditions that they made him a potential trade candidate by basically guaranteeing that they would pay a majority of his salary. So in come the Buffalo Bills with a need at wide receiver. And look at the Browns situation right now. They're the worst offense in the league. They're sitting at 1-5. And yes, Kevin Stefanski continues to pound the table publicly for Deshaun Watson that he's going to remain their starter. But the reality of all of this is that they have this constant headache of needing to navigate around Deshaun Watson's $230 million contract. So this could be the first move of many that I certainly expect to come this season, most definitely this offseason, as they continue to churn through so many important personnel decisions there. I wouldn't label this a fire sale per se, but speaking to folks in Cleveland also, they weren't necessarily happy also with Amari Cooper's dedication level this year, especially after the team extended Jerry Jeudy, who's going to step up into a more prominent role now with Amari Cooper gone. And the value there was good. I mean, a 3rd-round pick, considering Amari was going to walk in the offseason here coming up. They got to recoup all their draft capital that they can as they concentrate on the future, especially after giving up those 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson. Again, I wouldn't label this a fire sale. They still got some quality defensive backs. Obviously, they got one of the best defensive players in the league with Myles Garrett, but certainly one domino to fall here of one that I would expect many more to come.
Before we let you go, Josh, we can't not talk about the biggest trade of the week. As Wilkins prophesized on last week's episode, the New York Jets did indeed pull off a trade to acquire Davante Adams from Las Vegas. They've got the 6-time Pro Bowl wide receiver. He's now going to link up with Aaron Rodgers in New York, and the Jets are obviously hoping that the history and the chemistry between those two can reignite an offense that's averaging less than 19 points per game. What does Davante bring to New York, Josh?
Of course, Jonah, and just to preface all of this, this is based on conversations I've had with folks across the league. This is a move the Jets have been trying to make dating back to last year's trade deadline. So now that they finally get Aaron Rodgers' best friend into the building, you ask what to expect. I mean, you look at the tape this year, you still see some game-changing ability, particularly Adams' performance against the Ravens. Obviously, he's got that instant connection with Aaron Rodgers dating back to their days in Green Bay. He's staying with him right now at his place. The chemistry, that's really what the Jets are banking on, that they're hoping that it strikes a chord with Rodgers, because ultimately owner Woody Johnson, he is all in on this season. We've seen the sluggish start, but he is hell-bent on going all in with this roster that Joe Douglas has constructed. And particularly their last 3 losses, they've lost by a combined 10 points. So they really want, this next level of the offense to be tapped into. And their struggles from this most recent game, arguably their best offensive performance, as they made some changes at the play calling position. But Rodgers still 1 of 4 in the red zone. And that's an area particularly where Davante Adams, the master of the back shoulder fade, that they're hoping he brings immediately as the Jets try to salvage this season.
Yeah, we'll see what the two can pull off together. Maybe they can still access some of the magic they had in Green Bay. JT, thanks for the insight as always, buddy. We'll catch up with you next time.
Hey, guys, always a pleasure.
See you, Holmes. Fellas, I want to continue with the Jets and Davante Adams for a second. Boone, between Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, do the Jets suddenly have the best wide receiver duo in the entire NFL?
I mean, they're really, really good, and I'm a huge Garrett Wilson fan. And you look at Davante, I mean, the resume is incredible, right? Like over 100 catches 5 of the last 6 years. Would have been 6 for 6 if he, didn't miss 4 games, and I think it was 2019. Double-digit touchdowns in 6 seasons. That's also on his resume. So, one of the best receivers, just a great player. And then Wilson, we were finally starting to get to see what I thought he could be with a good quarterback, with Aaron Rodgers the last few weeks, back-to-back 100-yard games. Now the volume maybe not going to be there, but I always fall back into the fantasy world with it. So great receiver duo. But no, I mean, I don't even think they're top 3 in terms of wide receiver duos in the NFL. And I think we're going to put that to the test right now.
We most certainly are. Thank you for the segue. Fellas, it's time for a little Would You Rather. And for the purposes of this exercise, let's assume everyone is healthy, okay? Everyone on this list is healthy. So, assuming everyone is healthy, would you rather for... Let's try that again. Assuming everyone is healthy, would you rather for the remainder of the 2024 season have Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams or A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith?
It's A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Come on. Those guys are incredible.
Yeah. Give me A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, but it's closer than I think most people realize.
We also have to say, too, we're talking about the talent of the receivers. I don't think we're factoring in their quarterback situation.
Correct.
Right? We're just talking about the talent of the receivers.
That's right.
I agree. I think it's Smith and Brown. I don't know how well Adams and Wilson will complement each other this year, being on the field together.
We'll find out. Would you rather have Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams or Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle?
I would rather have Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson.
Again, I think the fit of those two complement each other so well. I'll take Waddle and Tyreek.
Wow, that one's really tough. I think I'm going to go Adams. I think I'm going to go the Adams-Wilson side on that one, but it's really close.
Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams or Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs?
Nico Collins is awesome, but I'm still going Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson.
I would do the same.
I agree.
Clean sweep. Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams or Jamar Chase and T. Higgins?
Don't do it.
Do it.
It's obvious.
I don't think people realize how good Davante still is.
I don't think people realize how good T. Higgins is. Come on.
Yeah, give me Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but it's real close.
Again, I go back to the same question. The complement of Chase and Higgins is great. I will still go with those two.
I think the Bengals guys might be number 1 overall.
Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, or DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett?
Davante and Garrett.
God, you want to talk about a guy who's aged like fine wine, Tyler Lockett has? I would go Adams and Wilson, though.
It's Adams and Wilson, and I think the pairing for Seattle might not even involve Lockett. It might be Jackson Smith and Jigba, the number 2 there.
It's true. Put some respect on JSN's name. Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, or Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison?
Jefferson's the best receiver in the league, and I think Addison's close enough to Garrett Wilson, so I would take the Vikings guys.
That's a good point, I guess. I would still go. I'm going to go Adams and Wilson, though.
I'm going Jets.
Jets, Jets. Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, or Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua?
Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua.
He's really thinking about this one.
We did say that we're assuming everyone's healthy.
I'm just thinking about are Adams and Wilson going to be in the are either one of them going to play the slot and fill that role really well? Because Cooper Kupp is just the best.
Best in the business.
I'll do Kupp and Nacua.
It's a coin flip, but I'm going to the Rams guys.
And last up, Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, or Mike Evans and Chris Godwin?
Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson.
See, that is the case of two guys that could not be a better fit to play together, is Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And for that reason only, that's who I'm going to take.
I think it's the Bucs guys, hands down.
They do complement each other so well. Chris Godwin in the slot, Mike Evans out wide, like peas and carrots. Fellas, that was good stuff. Now let's focus on the other wide receiver who got traded. Let's come back to the Amari trade. Josh obviously examined it from the Browns' perspective, but we haven't touched on the implications for the Bills, who didn't really have a wide receiver one since parting ways with Stephon Diggs. T, is Amari the missing link for the Bills?
Yeah, so I got a lot of great information I'm excited to share with you guys. First thing, call out is credit to the... I mean, do you remember what the Dallas Cowboys got for Amari Cooper? Like a 6th-round pick, and somehow this guy's aging so well that he's now going for a 3rd? I think the situation is with Buffalo is on 3rd down. They've been pretty bad. I believe Allen is 30th in the league, maybe, on completion percentage on 3rd down, 52%. They ranked 24th in 3rd down conversion rate. They expected Dalton Kincaid to be that guy for them. He hasn't. He leads the team on 3rd down with 9 targets, just 4 catches, a couple of drops as well. Obvious spot for Cooper to fill. But as well, Allen has attempted 16% of his passes have been 20-plus air yards. So that's 2nd in the NFL, and they're just not hitting those. He's completed only 32%. The deep ball has not been there. Keon Coleman leads the team. Those seem to be his only targets he's getting as those downfield ones. Hasn't been too great there. Those are 2 spots Cooper can help. Because last year, I think none of us feel like I think I agreed with Josh when he said, how motivated was Cooper this season whatsoever? We have not seen his best. So there's still a question mark as to whether or not he can still be that guy. But was 19th in the league on completion percentage in those passes at 20-plus air yards. He's going to be a reliable target. He's aged well because his route running has improved significantly. Last year, he had over 1,000 of his receiving yards against zone coverage. So he's been able to find those soft spots, going to be able to be a guy to get and move the chains and move the sticks on 3rd down. So he's a really good fit, I think. It's just about, is he still playing at that same level? I think he has some of it. But again, the Bills don't feel like they need to give up a ton of assets and get a truly elite top-end guy. But I think this makes a ton of sense. This is still a very good team.
The biggest thing, as the resident Bills fan here, the biggest thing is this bumps all those other guys down into spots that they probably make a lot more sense, right? Like Kincaid being maybe the number 1 or Shakir being the number 1. That's just not right. They're not in that spot, at least not now in their career. Maybe Kincaid will get better as time goes along, but this gives them that legit number 1 guy. And I still think that Amari is going to be very boom or bust. That's just kind of the receiver that he is. And the Bills are still going to pass the ball around, right? He's going to spread the ball to a bunch of different guys. I don't think Cooper's coming in and it's going to be a Diggs situation where they're throwing to him, 10, 12, 14 times a game. But it just allows those other guys like Shakir to play a slightly lesser role, not get as much attention from the defense. Overall, it's just such a great move for Buffalo.
I think for me, the big thing is that they finally have someone who can get open within the structure of the offense. They did not have that before. We were running out Mac Hollins and Curtis Samuel in the year 2024. Yeah. Now they finally have a legit receiver. I know you said they maybe shouldn't or won't be throwing it to him 10, 12 times a game. I would. I think he's still that kind of receiver. You wondered whether he's still motivated to play this year. I wouldn't be motivated to play with
Exactly,
Deshaun Watson.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if we remember back to the offseason, he was floated in trade rumors for Brandon Ayuk, and we saw like a social
Right.
media post from Amari Cooper acknowledging that. I think he's going to be so happy to get out of there, go play with an elite quarterback. And, you know, you talked about the price for the trade. Third-round pick, a little surprising given what the Cowboys got, but you got to remember that in the NFL, these contracts are traded as much as the players are. So the way the Browns structured things, this is a league minimum salary that the Bills are picking up. That's why they're giving up a third-round pick, and that's why the Cowboys only got a 6, because they were trading a $20 million salary.
I'm back in Josh Allen to win MVP.
Wow, he's back, baby.
I'm back in. It was insane. First 2-3 weeks where it was just like, this guy's easily winning MVP. Then a couple down weeks, Cooper's a good fit.
Basically, we're going to have the in-structure stuff now and the out-of-structure stuff that you get with Josh Allen. I still think he's a top candidate.
That run game. I mean, Ray Davis ran wild on the Jets
Sure
the other
did.
night.
My guy.
This team is complete in terms of their offense, and Cooper really helps.
All it takes for a player's MVP candidacy is a game against the Jets, and you're like, yeah, no, this guy's going to do it. He's, anyways, fellas, Cooper got traded, Adams got traded, Cam Akers got dealt. The trade market is clearly heating up ahead of the November 5th trade deadline, which is now less than 3 weeks away, which is crazy. Wilkie, which other teams, like Cleveland, like Las Vegas, could be sellers as we approach the deadline?
Yeah, you obviously have to start with the Browns and Raiders. I think they both need to just be selling off anyone they don't consider as a long-term piece moving forward. Just get all the picks you can, try to get a quarterback next year. Aside from them, you're looking at teams like the Jags, the Panthers, the Titans. For the Jags, a bit of an arms race at receiver right now. I think they're going to be taking calls on Christian Kirk. You probably need to pay down some of that salary to move him, but I think it's doable. I also think that they're probably going to get calls on Travis Etienne with Tank Bigsby having emerged there. And I really like Andre Sisco as a potential trade deadline candidate for a team that needs a boost on the defensive end. Really good playmaking safety who's in the last year of his rookie contract.
He was the one that was talking about the guys on the team aren't giving 100%
Yeah,
effort
yeah,
and stuff,
yeah.
so he clearly wants out.
Yes. I would love to see him traded because he's a very good player. The Panthers, we talked about Jadeveon Clowney. I think he would be awesome with the Lions. We've talked about before how Deontay Johnson could be a good fit with the Chiefs, and I would love to see a team take a chance on Bryce Young. I know he might be a bust, but he'll be cheap. Just someone take a chance. There's enough teams that need a quarterback. And then the Titans, they could get rid of any of their receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, Traylon Burks if someone wants them.
Can't be Calvin Ridley because he didn't record a catch. I don't think the market's
That's right.
high on.
And then I could include the Patriots, but I'm not sure how many pieces they have. Maybe Josh Uche, maybe a couple guys on defense, but I wouldn't be subtracting anyone from an already thin offense if you're trying to build around Drake May. But this all kind of drives home the point that I think that there are so many contenders in the league right now, not a whole lot of teams in the middle, and an increasing number of teams just in the bottom with no chance. It could be shaping up for a really interesting trade deadline.
The middle class is being suppressed in football in America. Do you think we've already seen the biggest trade of the season?
Yeah, I think Davante Adams was going to be the biggest trade no matter what. I wouldn't rule out a couple more really big ones.
I mean, Reddick's just that big. I think these.
Reddick would be the other big one. I wouldn't be surprised if some people start wondering if the Chiefs are going to make a Godfather offer to get Tyreek Hill back. I don't think that would happen, but I think that as we get closer to the trade deadline, we could start hearing things like that. I think the teams will start to get aggressive. When you get teams like the Jets and the Bills making these kind of moves, other teams have to respond, so we'll see.
First Kareem Hunt, then Tyreek Hill. Band's back together, baby. It's going to happen. Really good stuff, guys. Let's look ahead specifically to this weekend's matchups because there are some bangers that we got on tap. We've got a Super Bowl rematch for one. We've got the two best teams in the NFC going at it. And that's not all. Wilkie, what's the matchup you're most looking forward to in Week 7, and what's a question you hope to see answered in that game?
I can't wait to see the Super Bowl rematch, and I want to know if the Chiefs are going to keep getting away with this. We've talked about it a lot. The injuries at receiver kind of ruined their plans on offense, and the depth chart just looks every bit as bad as it did last year. But then out of nowhere last week, we get Juju Smith-Schuster going out for 7 catches and 130 yards. He turns back the clock to his rookie season. That's the best he's posted since 2018, I believe. I guess for me, I'm wondering if this game against the 49ers can be a good barometer of where the Chiefs offense really is at. You know, if they do the same thing and Juju proves that, you know, his connection with Patrick Mahomes and him finally being healthy gives him enough to be like a high volume target in this offense and a productive one at that, maybe they don't attack the trade deadline the same way we've all been expecting. I personally would love to see them do it. I think DeAndre Hopkins is the best fit there, but they've got Patrick Mahomes, so maybe they just have all they need at all times. I'm excited to see this game either way.
Yeah, and I love that spiel for two reasons. One, I just picked up Juju Smith-Schuster in fantasy. But two, I just finished watching Breaking Bad for the first time. I know, a little late to the game, so I get the
First
reference.
time.
I know, it's hard to believe because usually I'm pretty good about, taking care of the canon shows. But I just finished it, so I appreciate the reference. I get the reference, and I feel like I belong. T, what's the game you're looking forward to and the question you want to see answered?
By far most excited for Detroit and Minnesota because you have a dominant defense going up against one of the best offenses in the league. And can Minnesota solve Jared Goff and bring some confusion? Because he's been very good when under pressure and when blitzed. And we know the Vikings with Flores, they lead the league in blitz rate at 40% of plays. They're a top 10 team in terms of pressure rate as well. And Goff's been the best quarterback in the NFL under pressure in terms of completion percentage, a top quarterback as well with his yards per attempt above 8. And then against the blitz, he's just demolishing teams. He's got like a yards per attempt over 12, I believe, and a 70% completion percentage. And Jamison Williams is just taking the top off opposing defenses when blitzed. He has 11 receptions for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's averaging, or 11 targets, 7 receptions, 247 yards. He's averaging 35 yards per catch against the blitz. The Vikings, blitz heavy, zone heavy, play a lot of cover 4, so try to take away those big plays, and they do a great job of doing it, like 28% completion percentage on those deep passes. It's a great chess match. Goff does have a bit of a high turnover-worthy play rate when blitzed. He's got 3 interceptions when blitzed. So can they continue to cause confusion for Goff, force some of those turnover-worthy plays? But the thing is you blitz, and Goff's really low ADOT, you'll check it down to guys like Gibbs, Laporta, Amon-Ra, and they can create yards after the catch and really make defenses pay for sending those numbers. One of the best offense versus defensive matchups of the entire season, honestly, in Ben Johnson and Brian Flores. And we're going to get it twice this year because these two teams are in the same division. So I love this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Booney?
I'm going with the Packers and the Texans, and I'm not even going to talk about the offenses at all. You'd think with Jordan Love and C.J. Stroud that we'd go in that direction, but I'm curious, how good is Green Bay's defense? Because if you look at different stats, they're not really that special in many areas. If you look at the players, on paper, this shouldn't be a really good defense. And yet this year, they've been pretty good most weeks. I know over 30 points to the Eagles in the opener, over 30 points to the Vikings. In their other 4 games, they've held teams to 14 points or less. They've been really opportunistic. They got 9 interceptions. They got 8 fumble recoveries. So can they keep this going? Can they do it against a pretty good opponent? And I know Houston not 100%, Nico Collins on IR, so they don't have their full complement of weapons out there. But if the Packers do it in this game, it's going to be really interesting because the Packers are clearly focused on trying to make it to a Super Bowl. They're going to need their defense to help them get there. We know the offense is pretty good. Is the defense good enough to get them where they want to go?
Yeah, it's a really valid question. And for my part, I'm looking forward to Bucs and Ravens because I really want to know if the Bucs are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Because it's strange. According to Pro Football Reference, they've actually had the hardest schedule in the NFL so far, and yet it's still kind of difficult to buy into their 4-2 start. Yes, they beat the Commanders and they beat the Lions, but they also got rolled by Denver, and even last week, they coughed up a 24-point lead against a New Orleans team that had Spencer Rattler making his NFL debut. They did proceed to put up a 50-burger, but ultimately it's been kind of an uneven season for the Bucs, and I think that this game, this test against one of the league's elite teams will provide some more clarity into who they are. Are they a team that can compete with anyone and can put up 30 points a game, or are they a mirage that happened to catch Jaden Daniels in the first game of his NFL career, happened to run into Jared Goff when he had his second worst game by passer rating since joining the Lions? Regardless, I think it's clear that the Bucs can win the NFC South once again. They can make the playoffs, but I think what this week is going to show for us is can they compete with the league's best teams and actually contend for a Super Bowl? So I'm really looking forward to that one. And on that note, fellas, there's only one thing left to do. It's trivia time. You guys know the rules at this point. If you get one wrong, you're out. Here's your question for this week. Patrick Mahomes is currently on pace for his 7th career 4,000 passing yard season. Can you name the 9 other quarterbacks in NFL history with 7 or more 4,000 passing yard seasons? You guys know the rules. You get one, you're out, and I'll give you the question one more time. Patrick Mahomes is currently on pace for his 7th career 4,000 passing yard season. Can you name the 9 quarterbacks in NFL history with 7 or more 4,000 passing yard seasons? And I think Wilkie gets first pick this time. We'll go in our usual order.
It's Boone.
Oh, it's Boone? All right, Boone, and then Tyler, and then Dan.
Peyton Manning.
Correct. He's got 14 of them.
Are we going to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Tom Brady.
Correct. He's also got 14 of them.
Aaron Rodgers.
Correct. He's got 10 of them.
Drew Brees.
Correct. He's got 12 of them.
4,000 yards. That's the thing. Ben Roethlisberger? Oh, my God.
Sorry to see you go first once again, T.
Frick.
But at least it wasn't on your first answer,
Yeah,
man.
that's true.
So you're making progress.
Breeze and, Manning were the...
Philip Rivers.
Correct. He's
God,
also got 12
I'm
of
a
them.
bad fan. I'm a really bad fan.
Dan Marino.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't
Incorrect.
think him or the other have it. that I'm thinking
Hard
about.
to believe. And also, there was an opportunity
7.
there for me to make a joke. Philip Rivers has as many 4,000 passing yard seasons as he does children. That's an easy way to remember it. I jest. I think he only has... How many kids does he have? 10? Anyways.
I think 11.
A lot, yeah. Enough to field a team for sure.
Yeah. Dan Marino, by the way, just finished short. He had 6 seasons with 4,000 passing yards or more, and 1 season with 3,997. So you missed it by 3 yards. But Wilkie, if you get one here,
Maybe this
you're the
other guy
champ.
does have it. That I'm
Can I call a friend and let him know that I'm going to win?
Yes.
Matthew Stafford.
Correct.
Great one.
Matt Stafford has 9 of them and counting, perhaps. Wilkie is the champion. Here's the guys you missed.
Was Brett Favre on the list?
He was not.
Okay.
Was
He was-
Joe Montana on the list or no?
Nope.
Yeah.
You got to have it
That
all
was
be
before
modern
passing
guys
was
if
a
it's
thing.
4,000
Yeah,
yards.
exactly.
That's what I
That's the thing.
thought, yeah.
All of these guys
That's what I thought.
played this century, right? All of the guys played this century. Here are the ones you missed. Matt Ryan, he had 10 of them. Eli Manning, he had 7 of them. And another active quarterback, Kirk Cousins. He's also got 7 of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I'm
and
glad
counting.
I said Stafford because I wouldn't have gotten any of those last 3.
Heck of a job, and likely by season's end, this list will extend to 10, and Patrick Mahomes will be on there too. But once again, well done, fellas. T, you'll get him next time. And thank
Maybe.
you so much for tuning into this episode of No Timeouts. Once again, that's Justin Boone, that's Tyler MacKillop, that's Dan Wilkins, and my name is Jonah Birnbaum. We'll see you next time.